So again, hello everyone, welcome to today's seminar. We had a bunch of questions on our question email address, which are forwarded to Roxanne and Jacque, and I guess they will start answering those. And for everyone who wants to ask additional questions today, please send them to me by private message, and they will be forwarded to Jacque and Roxanne to answer.
Okay, thank you, Sven. Appreciate that. Thanks for everyone showing up.
Yes, I appreciate that very much. I'll say we do.
Yes. Okay, let me get to the beginning of the questions. Don't you see a major challenge in people willingly giving up their personal property, i.e. homes, during any transition?
I don't see anybody giving up anything. I see the system failing, like banks closing, automobile companies closing down, but nobody's giving up anything. Their business will begin to collapse and they will lose it. When people lose their homes, they're not giving up anything. The banks take over because they fail to make the payments. And that's when you get the social change. It takes events like that to turn people around. They don't give up anything.
Could any knowledge develop to practical use and made available to anyone in a DIY kit, i.e. anything to make people less energy dependent, like photovoltaic sources of energy, be of any good as a booster for the Venus Project?
Yes, it can be, but I wouldn't talk of photovoltaic and solar power. I mentioned heat concentrators, geothermal, wave power, underwater ocean currents, the Gulf Stream, the Icelandic current, the Japan current. I mentioned things that can provide more than enough energy, that are constant flows, that do not depend on cloudy days or days of less energy available. Geothermal energy is available all the time. Ocean currents are available all the time. Wave power is not available all the time. Temperature differential is not available all the time, but most of the time. But there are lots of sources of energy where you don't have to depend on solar alone.
If you're talking about possibly making information available as to where to get this or what might be useful, that information is on the internet, and we don't have knowledge as to which ones may be better. We haven't put those things to test, which products. We really couldn't endorse particular products like that. If you're talking about something that's useful to people, we can't even afford anything like solar here. So
What's the question?
just talking about the last question. Okay, here's another question. I come from a Texan family that holds property rights on a high pedestal. He's saying, my question is, how will we make a peaceful transition when so many people are so attached to their material possessions and are willing to fight or even die to defend their property rights?
We say that social change is brought about by biosocial pressures. If you don't know what that means, if most agriculture dries up, food prices will go up. That's called biosocial pressures. People who want to defend the material they have can only do that under the guise of the free enterprise system. If people do not have purchasing power to buy the products turned out by the free enterprise system, the system will collapse. It has nothing to do with whether people want to give up things or not. It's called biosocial pressures or the march of events.
And do you think that AI might become so advanced someday that it might become dangerous and they might start making unpredicted decisions that are not very good necessarily for humans?
And this is only under a monetary system that can occur. But Remember, machines only do what they're programmed to do. They don't have ambition. They don't want to take your job away. Machines don't get angry. They don't feel overworked. They work all the time, and as long as they're turned on, they produce. Machines have no personality problems. They don't get angry. They don't want to take your job away. They don't want to control people. These are human attributes which are projected into machines by Hollywood to make a movie exciting.
There are so-called futurists today who work with robotics who are afraid of this, machines taking over. Do you think that's true in the future?
No, it's not. There's no fear at all. Machines will never take over, but they will be assigned tasks that humans cannot perform. Just like the butcher scale. A butcher cannot tell you the exact weight of a chicken, so they have a scale. It's not a takeover by the scales. The scales have been appointed to make those decisions because they're more accurate than people.
Machines don't have those needs. They don't have any gut reactions. They don't have emotions.
Yes.
They don't have ambitions.
This is true. These are human attributes. Don't project them into machines.
How does the Venus Project see jokes and laughter?
I imagine that the future will generate its own brand. However, I don't see much jokes being put out. Instead, information, and which make people happy and more confident in the system. There's no need to downgrade people or make fun of people who don't have the advantages of others.
Understanding that sexual patterns are learned, meaning orientation like bisexuality, and does this include the frequency, intensity, and importance we give to sexual desire and activities too? Is it possible that a person could feel that sex is just not as important as anymore and look beyond cultural conditionment?
I've answered these questions many times before. A lot of people think that I keep saying the same thing. That's because you keep asking the same questions. When you talk of sexual desire, if boys and girls would swim nude when they're very young, you'd have no peeping toms. Meaning, if children would swim nude, boys and girls together, with Orientals, Afro-Americans, there would be no collection of nude girls. There'd be no nude magazines. There'd be no revealing dancing that gradually reveals a female body. If you don't put an emphasis on it, it decreases the sexual intensity and the drive. If people walk around nude and swim nude and there are more nudist colonies, you will have no fetishes. You have to think about these things, not just listen to me, think about it. If people walk around nude and swim nude, there's no peeping toms. Do you understand that? And there are no fetishes.
And this person is asking, do you feel that in the future, instead of intense importance on sexuality,
it'll be decreased considerably.
Do you think the focus would be on aims, goals, learning, and activism?
It'll be on the essentials of the time.
Person asked a long question. I'm going to get to the end of this particular question. I understand we will continue to use the methods of science to make the objective technical decisions, but what methods will the resource-based economy use for all the subjective, non-technical decisions if they don't use democracy and money?
First of all, I don't understand what non-technical decisions are. Everything that we use, electricity, washing machines, cooking, lighting, music, all that's technical. Even surgery. They have so many instruments going in a hospital today that measure your body temperature, your blood pressure. Doctors couldn't work without those instruments. So I don't know what non-technical means. Even human affairs are based upon learning how to relate to other people. And if you can't speak their language, you can't communicate with them. So we have to also develop universal communication which is not subject to interpretation. If you don't know what that means, it means that the daily language we use goes in the head of one person and comes out in relation to their experience. This does not hold true for scientific methods of evaluation. When a chemist writes a formula, other chemists know exactly what he means. It's not subject to interpretation. When engineers design things, it's not subject to interpretation. The blueprint specifies all the characteristics of the particular job to be accomplished.
Let's see, this person, I guess he means, I'd like to expand on ethics in science and its limits, either in present society and in the monetary-based society and resource-based economy.
First of all, ethics is a byproduct of a monetary system. Those that have a lot are encouraged to give something to the poor or to permit equal treatment of people. But if you have a lot of money in this society, you can afford better attorneys to defend you. So you don't have equal justice under the law.
Yes, and I just want to add that laws come from when many people have a lot of possessions, they make the law as to not to steal because they have what people want to steal. Okay, and this person is also asking how to minimize vices caused by the current social model. Well,
we don't use the current social model, so we don't have the same problems. The problems generated by fascism, socialism, communism, and free enterprisism are uniquely related to that method of distribution of wealth.
What is science?
Well, different people have different interpretations, but my interpretation of science is to test things. In other words, rather than ask people for their opinions, ask them what the torsional strength is, the compression strength, the tensile strength. Not an opinion, but a test. I don't know if you know this, but they do cast concrete into cylindrical sections, and then they put them in a hydraulic press to see what the concrete can stand. I like that system, where all systems are tested. And when they can't be tested, you say we don't have any information in that area. That remains to be forthcoming. So you have to put things to test in order to arrive at information. No one makes decisions, they arrive at them. If you don't know what that means, you put so much gas in a car and you travel, and then you decide that that particular vehicle gets 40 miles to the gallon or 100 miles to the gallon. You don't make that decision before the test. You put everything to test and reveal your statistical data. That's the way decisions are arrived at rather than made.
Is there any substance in abundance that is a viable replacement to oil?
Yes, there are many, but it depends. You can make cooking plates of ceramic material if you don't have metals. You can, if you're stranded on an island, you can cook in a seashell. In other words, there are many different approaches. We don't make all the viable approaches available today because we sell particular pots and pans, and we are interested in selling the products that we make, not alternative methods.
I find that the people that are most indoctrinated into the old way of thinking are highly productive members of society, like doctors, engineers, and scientists. How can we succeed if these people are not in solidarity with us?
I don't know what that means exactly, but I can say this, that in the future, doctors will be assigned problems and do research on those problems. And after their findings are verified, not for profit, but for health reclamation, rather than using artificial coloring and food preservatives and spraying plants with poisons, you're going to have the medical profession and the health department in charge of making those decisions. Since they do not make decisions to sell a given product, they're more apt to be relevant to human need. In a profit system, each company pushes its own product, and their bottom line is profit, not the well-being of people. If you don't understand that, you don't understand the profit system.
Do you find that these people, meaning people who are successful in this system, doctors, engineers, and scientists, are as simple to change as other groups like the KKK or the White Citizens Council?
Yes, if provided with information. If your design does not include them, they will tend to fight. The design must include all people, all nations, all nationalities, regardless of religious beliefs or customs. If you don't include all people, you will have many different problems.
Would there be fairs in a resource-based economy?
Yes, but the fairs will be showing you what's new, what's available, and why we recommend change. No one will make changes without showing you the reasons for it. And if you oppose the reasons for it, you can oppose the reasons for it. You can get up and say, we don't agree with you. This is why we don't agree. Then the system is put to test, and the results of that test are made available to all people.
What type of music did you used to listen to?
I used to listen to mostly classical music. Beethoven, Brahms, Bach, Wagner. But when music is played alone, without being used in a motion picture to help your emotions grow with it, then the music becomes a nothing thing, unless it's utilized in rap sessions or in some way informing people. But if music is just played for a series of sounds, it's about as nothing as a set of earrings.
Do you think people like Michael Shermer are self-appointed guardians of the status quo in that they never question what corporations or governments say?
Well, they don't question that because they feel that that's okay. They think that the system, the monetary system, can be improved by an educated public. The monetary system cannot be improved by an educated public. Let me give you an example. If you turn out products faster than my company does, if you share your ideas with me, we will turn out more products. You will lose the competitive edge and you will lose the investment of other people unless your product is unique and better than mine. If you share your ideas with other people, you will lose the gain of investment in your company. So the company depends on the system. If the system is a free enterprise system where you don't share ideas, for example, patents, like I said before, deprive other people of using your ideas. In the future, there'll be no patents. All inventions will be shared by the world, and that will elevate every human being. If you don't understand that, all human beings need the same thing. I've said this many times: clean air, clean water, a relevant education, and no price tag on available goods. When goods are available without a price tag in a non-monetary system, you will not have territorial problems. You will not have abuse of nature. You will not have dumping waste materials into the oceans when you work for the benefit of all humanity. It's only when you have private institutions with selfish gain for those institutions that you're going to have territorial problems. When you have the concept of ownership, you'll have the concept of removal of objects from other people without their permission, called crime. Now, we think that there's such a thing as a criminal. I would say that our system is a criminal justice system. I would say that the world you live in induces crime of different kinds by scarcity, by maintaining the artificial scarcity. If you don't know this, some farmers are paid not to grow food, to plow over. Many inventors design things to wear out, break down, to keep you coming back for new products. In other words, as long as you have the human brain, and as long as the human brain can invent things that don't tend to wear out and break down, that's a useful thing. But if you design things to wear out and break down, that's working against the grain of science. And the free enterprise system is totally against the grain of science.
Do you think that the reason some people continue to not understand the Venus Project is because of cognitive dissonance or neuronal linguistic programming?
Well, if you mean neuronal linguistic programming, by the way they're brought up and their values, yes, that's why they don't question the system. People that are brought up under fascism are not given other points of view. People that are brought up with a king in charge are not brought up to appreciate the real value of a democracy. In other words, every culture raises its people to be obedient to the culture they're brought up in.
People being called technocrats is becoming frequent on the news. These people are majorly government leaders or top economists managing huge companies. These jobs wouldn't even exist in a technocratic system. Why, in your view, are the supporters of a technocratic society being so misrepresented by people who should investigate and know better?
Well, obviously, all systems that threaten any established system will be a threat to that system. Just remember, there are thousands of things that be a threat to this system. If you generate images of people to do commercials on television, the people that are paid to do commercials will be against that. If you made automobiles with memory materials, so if you dented the fender, you can press straighten that out, and the fender's self-straightening, the people that straighten out fenders will find that very offensive. There's not a single thing you can do in the present-day society where someone won't hate you.
Oh, I would say that the news broadcasters and the news, the major corporate news out there are definitely the self-appointed guardians of the status quo. It's one of my favorite terms that Jacque arrived at, self-appointed guardians of the status quo, and they don't even know it. They couldn't get jobs, they couldn't maintain their jobs at those news broadcast companies if they inquired, if they brought up alternatives, or if they really questioned openly what the system was doing. They have their jobs because of the large corporations. They also represent most of the other corporations too. It's so condensed today that, the people who sell automobiles and who sell armament also own the news companies. So I don't think they'd want to bring up the methods of science organizing society. And they probably don't even know anymore what a technocrat is. That term has been changed a great deal when they call people technocrats. Why doesn't the Venus Project put forward the blueprints and methods used to manage the environment so that they can start being put forward now, and when the Venus Project is finally implemented, get the benefits from it?
We do that. You have to get our book, The Best That Money Can't Buy, or come to some of our tours. We put out all that information in our books, our tours, our literature, our videos.
There are a lot of alternatives for the environment and for improving the environment today, even within business models, but they're not implementing it at all. They're not interested. So, Jacque started doing products that were efficient and clean and beneficial to people, but they're very, very hard to implement if you get it in there at all. And it's really, he came to the conclusion that it's really the social design that has to be changed and introduced.
Why should the petroleum companies emphasize the electric car when they spend so much money on oil platforms and oil refineries? They're not interested in the electric car. Why should they be? It'll put them out of business. So you have each corporation fighting for survival. That's why the drug companies cannot be fair. That's why lawyers exist. because language is subject to interpretation. And they can take language and twist it around, if you can afford the right attorneys, to make you come off with a lesser prison sentence. The system itself is self-defeating eventually, but the suffering, while it exists, is enormous.
The same person asked, and I think we just answered that, have you thought about ways to promote small projects and tasks you are working on? Yeah, we started that way, but it doesn't work. Even if you develop a design, it doesn't mean that it will get into the system, even if it's better and more efficient. You know, Jacque mentioned, there are scientists that came up with products that last a long time, and they were sent back to the lab to figure out how to make them break down and wear out faster, so they can have a product to continuously sell.
It's called planned obsolescence.
I'm doing a master's on management and environment. How can I, still as a student, knowing very little, be of assistance to the Venus Project using very little I know? Please sign up on our professional database. Ben could introduce what we're doing with the Corsan project, whether he wants to do it now or later, where he is using a lot of different professions to correlate different information for that project that we're working on.
Read our books, get our tapes, view our presentations, become familiar with it before you pose a question.
That really wasn't related to that one though, but but that's true. Can we generate enough energy from renewables for a resource-based economy?
We can generate more than enough energy. I've answered that in one of the earlier questions. If you forgot the answer, tides, you can harness the tides. You can harness underwater ocean currents. You can harness geothermal energy, temperature differential, heat concentrators, photovoltaics. There's thousands of sources of energy.
Fumaroles, they're not even dealing with the fumaroles under the sea, the hot
volcanic
that's coming up under the sea.
Yes.
Do we actually have enough resources for a resource-based economy?
We have more than enough resources.
He's referring to books and things in this system that talk about how we don't have enough resources, that we would need things like 2 worlds to take care of the Earth like we're doing today. But they look at it under the system that we have today, the way that they abuse resources, that they claim that we can't take care of the needs of people all over the world, can't take care of the needs of everyone. But this is not how resources are organized or managed in a resource-based economy. It's very different. You don't go to school today and learn how to use resources wisely. As we said, you learn to make things wear out and break down, to continuously sell. You have to continuously sell things. So they're really plundering the planet for resources this way. They're just not how to think in terms of, they're not taught how to think in terms of using resources for many different uses. Like a long time ago, Jacque's car, the skin of the car had many different purposes. It generated energy, it covered the body, it was the part of the body that covered people inside. But people aren't taught those types of methods in school today.
No. You're taught to be a cog in a wheel and serve the advantages of the economy you're brought up in. You're not brought up to make life better for people. You're brought up to make a profit. And as long as you have the profit motive as number one, people become secondary to the profit system.
Yeah, they haven't given scientists that problem, how to make a better world. So
you don't have to give scientists that problem if they're raised to be scientists. They're not today. They're raised to be a cog in the wheel. Chemists, engineers, physicists, biologists, all utilized to serve the system they're reared in. In other words, the scientists in Nazi Germany fell in line with Hitler. Not all of them, some of them. And the scientists in France and China, Japan, always fall in line with their culture. The true scientist falls in line with preserving the earth and all people, The true scientist would question, why do we have war? Why do we have crime? Why do we have corruption? A true scientist would step out of their little disciplines and ask a lot of good questions. The scientists for a sane nuclear policy don't get that out. We still make atom bombs. Universities are best equipped today. They have all kinds of equipment, and the bombs and the wars are getting worse. So there's something dreadfully wrong with our free enterprise system.
During the transition, what is the methodology to decide who will get the medical treatment if the cure is scarce? Or should the methodology be like step one, give all the effort you can to overcome this scarcity?
I suppose you can say that. In other words, you got to remember, by keeping things scarce, if you don't know what that means, it means plowing under food. So you keep it scarce, you can keep the price up. The Kimberley diamond mines burn so many tons of diamonds every year because they're made of carbon. And by burning the diamonds, you can keep the price up. But if you produce diamonds abundantly, you can't sell them. You've got to understand these things. If you don't understand them, you have no way of looking at your culture. And most people do not have a way of looking at their social institutions. They're not brought up to question social institutions. They're brought up to accept them. And that is not science. Science is to make computers better, faster, smaller, and less expensive. That's the purpose of science, to improve equipment. Never sit back and say, well, this is it. This is utopia. I'm not a utopian. I don't believe you can design the best society. I believe that every year there'll be newer and different changes. That the longer society exists, it will undergo change. That to think that there are final frontiers holds back the social development. To know that all things are the best we know of up to now, but there are no final frontiers, no best way to do anything, no best airplane designs. They will continue to change.
There's a question here, what Jacque view about TED City 2? Actually, we haven't gone over that. We are going to be entering that. We're going to be putting something out on that, but we've entered a lot of contests like that. You have to understand that the judges they pick come from within this system, and they can't always, within a short paper, understand all the intricacies of this system in order to evaluate it. So we will enter and we'll see what happens. But if people can write in about the Venus Project and, in Jacque City, I think they have some kind of board or forum there that people discuss things. If you can do that and answer people's questions when they come up with negative aspects about it, come back at them. And because they generally look at it within the monetary system, they don't know enough about it, as I mentioned. So if you can come back at them and keep up with that forum, that would be great, but we will enter it. Okay, 2 weeks ago, I asked about mechanical mind, but didn't understand the answer. When you say that the mind is mechanical and man cannot think or reason, I see contradictions between this statement. It seems to me the human mind is not logical, but mechanism in order to function should be highly logical. Mechanisms should be highly logical without random qualities. Please comment.
I can only try to answer that. I would say that if you, the person that asked the question, were brought up in another country, you'd speak a different language. And if you were brought up in the South, you'd speak with a Southern accent and have Southern values. Remember that every word you use has been given you by your parents. They told you that this is a table, this is a chair, this is a bed, this is your mommy, this is your poppy. Everything that you say, even your facial expressions, your notions of love, kindness, good, bad, right, wrong, are given you by your culture. If you don't understand that, I said this and answered it many times. I really don't like repeating myself, but I get a repeat of the same questions over again. Remember this, If you're brought up in a world without electricity, it's normal to use a kerosene lamp or some form of light, like a candle. But that's all you know, that's all you're exposed to. People can never, I use this again, never exceed the society they're brought up in. If you're brought up by the headhunters of the Amazon and somebody said to you, you can have anything you like, you say, well, I'd like a Mercedes for my wife and my daughter, my children. You can't say that because such things do not exist. You can only talk within the confines of the world you're brought up in. In the old days, people used to wear armored suits. In the future, there'll be no wars. There'll be no need for armored suits. There'll be no need for the development of weapons. It's only in a self-centered, stupidly comprised society that you have war. War is a supreme failure of nations to bridge the difference with one another. They really don't know how. This is what the problem is about. The Democrats and Republicans do not know how to solve problems. But please, don't take my word for it. Ask your congressman, how can you prevent war? How can you grow more food? They really don't know. Are they innocent? Yes, they are. They're deprived of methods of solving problems. We need problem solvers, not soldiers. Soldiers would be conditioned or brought up on different ways of solving problems rather than killing. Killing never solves problems.
I think what Jacque is referring to in regards to this question is that the brain is logical in the way it works. It reflects the environment that you're raised in. And if you're raised in a chaotic, non-scientific, emotionally driven, subjective society, yes, money driven as well, then you're going to reflect that. You're going to be chaotic. If you're raised with religion, you won't be able to think your way out of anything. And the way your brain works is reflective of what you see and the input that you get from your outside world. The example that he always uses, if you're raised in a gray ball, if you're able to exist till 20 years old, you'll come out not knowing anything but what's within the gray ball. So if you want a better world, if you want people who are more logical, if you want people who are more inquisitive and constructive and don't destroy the environment and take good care of one another, then you really have to change the total environment that you're raised in to nurture people in that way. And you can't do it in the monetary system. It'll have to be a resource-based economy, and you must teach the methods of science to people. Then you'll become more logical.
Let me just add to this. Person originally asking this question was especially interested in the term mechanical mind. Could you elaborate on that, please?
I didn't use that term, somebody else did. But the brain has mechanisms so that it remains in touch with the physical world. Gravity affects all people, no matter what your religion or politics. Nutrition affects all people, no matter what your religion or politics. There are certain laws in nature. If you don't get enough oxygen, you suffer that disorder. If you don't get the proper nutrients, you become ill. There are people that study nutritional living. They can supply better information than the average person has today. So we have to learn how to live in accordance with natural law. We don't want to conquer nature. We want to understand how nature works and live in accordance with natural law. If you maintain a population far in excess of what the earth can support, you're going to have territorial disputes. You're going to have malnutrition, unless you work on those problems, not pray for solutions.
I think maybe this person might have gotten that term mechanical mind, because I think you've referred to the human body as electrical, mechanical, chemical machines.
Yes, that's what we are.
Yeah.
I don't like the terminology, but that's what it seems to be. In other words, if we don't get water, we die. If we don't get oxygen, we die. If we don't get love and warmth, we can't give love and warmth. We have to have experience. in order to arrive at decisions. People think all people have it within them to be good or bad. This is artificial, untrue. It has nothing to do with the real world. When you think people are born artists, born geniuses, all that's a lie. It's not true. Anyone can be taught to be very creative or criminally inclined. It depends on the environment you're brought up in. I can raise dogs to kill people, tear them to pieces, or help the blind, or lead the blind. Dogs are neither good nor bad. It depends on the environment they're reared in. The same with people. People are neither good nor bad, nor lazy nor creative. All that's bull. All that's stuff given to you by your society to put the blame on individuals. It's the social institutions that generate behavior. If you don't understand that, we have recommended reading on our website. Look into it, please, before you call us.
Person is asking to comment on the current situation, the Venus Project funding, what techniques we've used in the past, why we've given them up, like membership support, what kind of funding techniques are you planning in the future? In the past, it was really just me and Jacque who were doing this, and we didn't go after grants because we didn't have a big staff or anything behind us, and it was easier for me just to work in a job that I had, a business that I had, which I no longer have because of the mortgage crisis. So that's how we did all our funding in the past. We did try and work with people for grant writing, but that wasn't very successful. We are continuing to look at that, though. We are mainly using whatever connections we find for fundraising and whatever people can do to do that. Once we get our script finalized for the movie, we are going to target just different studios or different people and the connections that we've made really through the field. So we're really working on meeting different people and making different connections that way. If anybody has any suggestions of what they want to do in regards to raising funds, this would be appreciated. You could get in touch with me at meadows@thevenusproject.com.
If you don't support the project, nothing will occur. It doesn't depend on Jacque and Roxanne. It depends on what you do out there to help promote and the realization of the resource-based economy.
Is the global warming a bigger problem for the future? And is there a point of no return if we continue to pollute in the current system?
Yes, there is a point of no return. I don't know whether we will avoid that or not. I cannot answer that. It depends on how much work other people do, how smooth the transition will be. If you do not inform and educate other people, the transition will be very painful. Right now, the threat of war between China, US, or North Korea, or any other country is always hanging in our midst.
Iran, yeah. I'd like to know about nutrition. I'd like to know about what the nutrition could be under the resource-based economy, especially related to meat. Is it possible to manage meat production in a sustainable way?
Yes, with the advent of nanotechnology, we won't have to kill animals or grow food. We can produce molecular structures of every nutrient the body needs. But if we don't have that, then we have to do research on conventional methods.
Have you heard about cosmic energy?
Yes, I've heard about it. Have you any way of harnessing it?
Has the Venus Project heard of open patents? We're talking about openpatents.org. No, we're not familiar with that. We'll take a look. Jacque Fresco, since the Venus Project has low funding, do you think it would be a good idea to make some personal invitations to join the Venus Project on some person's basis? Okay, summary, so excuse me, let me just read this. They're asking if we would send out letters for people to join the Venus Project. You know, over the years, we've sent out many letters and really never got any response for any of them. It's very difficult within a letter to explain what this is about. now that we have the media kit and our brochures, we have
Phil.
Sheena, who's helping a great deal, trying to get media out there. If you'd like to help in this way, we do have more materials, and you can add people to the list that we're sending these materials to introduce the Venus Project to. This would be very helpful if you'd like to help. Get in touch with Sheena.
We can use all the help we can get.
Have you figured out how much it costs to build the first city today?
And that isn't the question. The question is, do we have the resources to build a city? And do we have the willingness on the part of a separate nation to say, yes, we're going to build the first experimental city to test the validity of the Venus Project? We need that cooperation. Roxanne and I have no power. It depends on what nations decide to do, whether we will realize the resource-based economy. And it depends on how much work you do to help bring it about.
The first city fix, there are many interacting variables that would change what it would be like, or if we can do a small research center, if somebody would want a large center. So really the question would be, if somebody came to us and said, we have this much acreage of land, it's located here, here's the terrain, here's a survey where the nearest resources are, where the nearest roads are. We need so many people in there. We need, it'll be devoted to a specific project or a research center or something. Then we would draw up the blueprints for that specific request. If somebody else was funding this and wanted a specific design, and then we would take those blueprints and go and get quotes. It's a very long process to get exact quotes on an entire city, and it would take, within the monetary system, it would take about $800,000 to $1 million to do all that for exact quotes, and it would take about 8 months. But it's just like somebody coming to you and saying, how much is the price of a house? You don't know where it is, you don't know how big it is, how many people would be in it, how much money they have to do the latest technologies or energy efficient systems. You know, it's just not that easy. It doesn't quite work like that. But if you did have the funding to come to us and then we could deliver those exact prices for certain specifications. Okay, what will happen to all the art forms we have today in the future? Will they disappear if they do not have a technical application?
I think they do. I think that art, music, theater can all be socially advantageous if harnessed properly. Art forms is a different form of creativity which we haven't begun to tap yet.
This person is asking the same questions. Are the cities ready to build, designed, accounted for, or are they just ideas that would need more development? No, they're much more than just ideas. We have many blueprints, but they do need further development depending on, you know, as I mentioned, where it would be developed, how many people, what the funding is that people have to put into it. So that would depend on how far we go technically, but they're much more involved than just a drawing or a design, much more evolved. By this I mean somebody gave you materials and tools. If somebody gave you materials and tools tomorrow, could you start building?
Yes.
Just as an aside, I am sure most people want to know, how is Jacque doing? How are you doing, Jacque?
So far, all right. I'm still alive.
He still designs every day, and he still meets with people. Yesterday we had a tour where he just spoke for 5 hours, as he does every Saturday. So he's still ready to go with the first city and the movie.
The tour is very important.
Yeah. You said, Jacque is just saying the tour is very important. You said that things are produced to break down after a period of time. If this company were able to build things which wouldn't break down, why would this company not use this to their advantage?
They'll be out of business if they make things that don't break down.
A lot of companies make their money on the parts and fixing things.
Yes. Repair.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, I guess that's about it for now. Any other questions?
I guess you skipped some.
Oops, should I go back?
Right. There were two questions right above the last one you read out. Do you want me to read it out?
I think I see it. So any human limitations is no more in is in a resource-based economy. No laws, no rules, just education and truth.
Well, the way you phrase it is not the way I would phrase it. That all people in a resource-based economy would be trained or educated to learn to live within the context of the carrying capacity of the Earth's resources. We would also maintain a population in accordance with the carrying capacity of resources. If you don't do that, you're going to have trouble. That's natural law, not man-made law. Most man-made laws are BS, have no meaning at all. If you learn to live in accordance with natural law, I think we can make it.
You should have gotten 3 more now.
I go back to the questions I missed up here, I guess. Do you support adding the Venus Project to the curriculum of a youth movement? Definitely. Although there are also metaphysical views in there. What's better, little influence or none at all in this case? Yeah, we'd be glad to add the Venus Project to any curriculum.
Yes.
Whether it's metaphysically oriented, the group, no, he's saying, although there are also metaphysical views in there. You'd have to be specific as to what you're talking about, but sure. Okay, go ahead, what were you saying?
If metaphysical people use such words as harmony, peace, goodwill, I don't know what they mean by that. But I do know what it means to harness floodwaters and filter salt water so we can have drinking water. I don't know what people mean when they use the term metaphysical. They imply that it's beyond physics, but if they don't tell us how to do it, if they believe in peace and harmony, I don't always know what they mean. Sometimes people tell me that nature has harmony. I don't know what that means, but I know that big fish eat little fish, and that germs attack every organ in the human body. If you call that harmony, I see what you mean by it, but it is not harmony to me. Nature is neither good nor bad. It creates floods, hurricanes, earthquakes, damage. If a person says to me, I'm a nature lover, I mean, do you love earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes? What do you mean by nature lover? I don't know what people are talking about. They use a lot of words, but they don't even understand. Whenever you say I'm a nature lover, I would understand people that said there's certain things about nature that I like and certain things that I'd like to protect myself against. And that's floods, droughts, disease, all natural. And so that nature has many aspects of it, some constructive, some damaging. When we become honest enough to know that nature is not harmonious, it's many different ways. When we get to know those things, understand those things, rather than want to believe certain things because it's pleasant to believe, that's very different than being a dirty realist.
I'd like to know who is the most resourced person Jacque ever got to help, and what did he help you with? I would like to know how come Jacque, with all his charisma, didn't succeed to get a city in 40 years, and how could I do better?
He never tried to get a city in 40 years. He tried to work out all the problems related to a city. He tried to work out, why are people greedy? Why do they kill each other? Why do they build armaments? He wanted to get all that information together first before attempting to design a city.
During our King days in 1974, you were talking about a city. I think that times are catching up with Jacque and his direction. He was kind of a lone voice back there talking about a resource-based economy and city systems and technology. You know, he was talking about, if you see his book in, what was it, 69, he was talking about nanotechnology, but in different words, electroforming. There was no word for nanotechnology, but he was talking about the processes. So today, people understand that the system is falling apart, that it's not working. They didn't know that 40 years ago, and it's happening all over the world. So people are beginning to look for different processes and look for different alternatives. So now is the time to get the word out there. We're still not that well known, and this is the job that has to be done. The media is still very restricted. Jacque couldn't get on the air in 40 years. You know, Larry King didn't want him on the air after he started attacking cigarettes, or saying that an airbag has to be all around the car because you don't just hit in the front and the back. And Larry King was being sponsored by cigarette companies and car companies, and he asked him not to talk about those things, and he said he couldn't. So the conditions out there are not very favorable for somebody coming along with better ideas and getting them enacted, especially a totally new social design. But this is the work that has to be done, and maybe you can do it better, or not so much better, but you can have a lot of influence. We need all the help we can get, people understanding this direction and talking about it, especially now, because times are right for this. This person is asking about the Resonance Project. We're not familiar with that, actually.
No.
Have to look it up. Do you think a resource-based economy is feasible in the third world countries?
Yes.
Such as Argentina, definitely.
Yes, it's reasonable for all the nations of the world, from the most primitive to the most advanced.
So as long as there's resources, such as Argentina, taking into account how different our governments are compared to the U.S. It'd probably be better or easier to get to the governments in Latin American countries.
I'll let you know after we encounter that experience.
Also, what's your general idea about South America becoming a resource-based economy?
Well, I think there's high hopes. I'd love to get the opportunity to build the first resource-based economy anywhere in the world that a government wants to sponsor it. It is not restricted to any particular country.
Do you think those undergo cryonics deserve the chance to adapt to the future based on their judgment to be frozen and be forward thinking?
I don't think that the future will accept all your relatives that you want to shove into the future, because they come with primitive ideas. Why bother? It's easier to train people to a new way of thinking rather than revive those old monetary system people. You've heard the expression, "Oh death, where is thy sting?" Meaning that people have obsolete ideas, and it's not necessarily a bad thing that people pass on with ideas that are not valid.
Does Jacque encourage everyone buying a copy of the books he read as a young man to do with semantics, science and sanity, mind in the making, etc., and put them into public libraries?
Yes, I think the more books available with relevant information is good for people. But if it's based upon speculation, what different people believe, rather than what people know, it's not necessarily good, but it can retard the development of nations.
This person is asking about the TED Prize. Yes, we are going to enter that for the city. If your motion picture does not create a mass movement or interest, the likes of industry, scientists, big companies, etc., and it is not a great success and doesn't generate the funds needed for more movies or a city, how will your direction proceed?
It will not.
Would you?
Yes.
Yes, we would continue working towards it in any way that we can.
Just remember that man never built a flying machine without hundreds of people breaking their legs and not succeeding in building a flying machine. that Dr. Ehrlich did 606 experiments before he can control syphilis, that Edison went through 7,000 different elements to get the right filament for a lamp, that people don't just sit down and make the invention. They go through a lot of errors and lots of mistakes. And the Venus Project has similar problems in some areas. If things don't work, we have to revise the approach.
And
That's what science means, to put things to test, surpass the things that don't wear out, break down, and if we can't make those things, we put them on priority. In other words, we work on problems that are common to all people: heart disease, cancer, cystic fibrosis, brain disorders. There's so many problems that humans have. This is what the Venus Project concerns itself with, the solution to problems, not merely criticizing. If you criticize the government and don't offer alternatives, you leave people in midair.
And there has to be many different movies about this direction
Yes,
to meet the needs of many different people all over the world.
yes.
How could the average man take action upon the Venus Project Foundation now? I'd like to mention the word the Venus Project Foundation because there is another organization called Venus Project Foundation. Now they're using the word in their title, the Venus Project Foundation. And it gets very confusing. It's not the Venus Project. We are not a foundation. We have a nonprofit organization, a charitable organization called Future by Design. But I just want to make that clear. That's not what this person is asking, but just because he used those words. So he says, how could the average man take action upon the Venus Project besides spreading information, besides contributing to the Venus Project? Check our website under Get Involved. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of projects we're working on and will be working on, and we do need your help. We appreciate that. So check that out.
In regards to the question about well, let's call it a plan B, do you have an exact backup plan? That is a more detailed question following the one you just talked about.
Yes, we have many different approaches. That's why we recommend the tour. The tour here is not just a tour, it's a way of thinking. It's filling in all the things that you don't get on the outside world.
Yeah, I mean, we're working, as I mentioned before, I'm working on an hour documentary now. Hopefully it'll be out soon. We're continuously doing new materials. We're continuously getting new lectures out there and doing new things. We don't just depend on one thing. We're continuously negotiating with people for the city. You know, they don't come through a lot of times, so we don't talk about it, but we're always meeting with different groups. We're attending different talks, like we just had a talk with the Brazil Festival that we're working with them on. That'll be a big project. They're doing one every year. They're getting success so far. It's in the year 2012, Brazil, what is it, festival?
Well, let me just add to this. It's the Earth Day Brazil Festival, which will be held in Brazil in September 2012. And the Venus Project will be one of the most featured movements on that festival. So if you go to the webpage www.earthdaybrazil.com, I think, or it's org, you will find the Venus Project featured on their webpage, and so it will be on the actual festival. What they will do is it's a mixture of dance, music, and information workshops. And on these workshops, there will be several solutions presented. And actually, one of our project coordinators, Sheena Brett, who's co-coordinating the marketing team and coordinating the media contacts, is one of the organizers of this festival.
Yes, thank you. And if anybody wants to help with that festival too, and we're over there, if you're in the area, that would be very useful as well. But we'll have more detail on that as it develops. Thanks, Ben. This person is asking how long Jacque and I have been working on the Venus Project. I've been lucky to have the opportunity to learn about it since 1976. So I don't know how long that is, about 35 years. Jacque has been developing it, arriving at this, and working on different experiments since what, since your teens,
About
right?
75 years.
75. Well, you started before your 20s.
Yes.
Yeah, so since his early teens, he's been looking at the world and coming up with solutions. Do we wait for the monetary system to collapse before adapting, presenting this as the only viable option to a global society? No, we're not waiting at all. We're working really hard. We work every day at it. I've been working at it for 35 years, Jacque all his life. We don't sit around and wait for things to collapse, although that might enable us to get some more things done if enough people know about it. So this is this time where we have to really present it in every form we can and interest people and have them understand this direction, how it is a viable alternative. There may be a lot of people invested in the monetary system who may not shift in this way. Okay, this happens to me. What happens to the people who can't make it? Can you comment? Who don't change?
I don't know what you mean by can't make it.
Who do not shift in this way, he said.
And they'll be bypassed by countries that can.
Is the Venus Project a technocracy? If not, what is the difference?
Technocracy is for the United States, Canada, all the way down perhaps to Panama. It does not include the world. Technocracy, when I was a member, did not have a place for Orientals or Afro-Americans. They wanted them to start their own section. That was years ago. I could not accept the exclusion of any race, and I could not accept that the idea of technocracy for the North American continent. I wanted it to be a global thing, otherwise I felt it won't work.
They also had energy certificates.
Yes.
For purchasing things.
Well, that was before the advent of the concept of nanotechnology, which I think energy certificates would not be necessary.
Oh, even today, before nanotechnology, it wouldn't be necessary at this point. We can produce abundance. They also had no plans. They had no designs. They, well, and they didn't quite understand behaviorism when they said all is conditioning, yet they excluded blacks and Orientals.
From membership.
A question about being born with brain disorders or any disabilities, and they commit a murder or something. Wouldn't the relatives of the victims be angry and want revenge? How would this going to be put under control?
In the new educational system, people will be brought up to understand the factors that shape human behavior. Which I've repeated many times in the past, if you were brought up in Nazi Germany as a baby and you never saw anything else, you'd be a Nazi. So I'm saying that the Venus Project educates people in a way of thinking that does not have built-in hostility. We don't want to kill capitalists or hurt anyone. We don't want to imprison anyone. There are no prisons, no police in the Venus Project proposals. There's no armies, no navies. I've said this many times because people keep asking the same questions. I wish they would ask new questions.
Okay, this is a question about depression. You mentioned it's a loss of self-image, but explain why. His grandmother has schizophrenia, his aunt has obsessive compulsive disorders, my cousin and I have obsessive compulsive disorders. I mean, is it something to do with genes, not just the loss of self-image?
I believe that the genes are affected by environment.
Also, if you're raised in a family that has those types of, that type of conditioning, those types of behaviors.
Genetic propensities, they call it.
Well, if you have those types of behaviors in your surroundings, you're more apt to pick them up. Just like people from Mexico think that they're very highly emotional. They come from an emotional environment. It's not that they have a gene that makes them emotional.
Right, we agree. I don't think the genes have as much to do with human behavior as the geneticists think. I don't agree with most geneticists. I believe that environment plays a major role on the value system of a people brought up in that environment.
How could we achieve a smooth transition?
Through education only. If you fail to educate people, the transition will be coarse, difficult.
So what do you think we should do to capitalist misdirection like the Thrive movement, Venus Project Foundation?
To point out the shortcomings of the movement and to point out why it won't work. If you can't do that, you cannot alter people's values.
This person is asking, do you think we can automate you, Jacque? I'd like to work on that. Well, we're trying to document as much as Jacque as possible. He sits down many days here and we film him and we put it out on the 2010-2011 lectures. We also have 16 lectures, or we have hundreds of them. We're going to be making them into DVDs too from the early 70s and 80s.
Different subjects.
Yeah, where Jacque talks about different subjects. Would resource-based economy involve with having an inventory of most updates, situations?
Constantly updated. A resource-based economy will update the population as to everything new and every change made that has been verified.
It's talking about such as 8 million homes vacant that could be used to better quality of life.
They're too far out and they're too far away from city centers, and it requires delivery and shopping, which you have to drive for miles. The city has to be self-contained. The city has to generate its own energy, be near sources of information or material resources. If you have to build a city and transport the material 75 miles to the city, that's inefficient. So the future city will be self-contained. It'll have schools, shopping centers, medical centers, entertainment, education, all within the city's confines. You cannot operate the way cities are built today. Every building is a different size. All the windows are different. All the doors are different in the buildings. People get off at different times, so your freeways are jammed. It's very easy to solve those problems by having 1/7 of the population off every day of the week, so that the highways are never jammed, the beaches are never crowded, and you don't have to build new bridges and new roadways. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, please ask different questions related to that.
What would you say to people who argue about destroying cultures or losing languages? Will the resource-based economy still maintain certain cultures and languages as a way to hold on to what many people hold as precious?
Yes. If the tradition that people hold is useful to a culture, if it helps people survive, if it adds to their knowledge, that tradition will be perpetuated. If the tradition harms other people or harms other races or inhibits people from understanding things, that tradition will be surpassed. You cannot outlaw tradition, but you can outgrow it.
Person says this will be the last question. By 2021, by 2029, we can make it, according to Ray Kurzweil. Jacque, can you make it to 2029?
I don't know those things. I can't answer those questions.
We're doing our best. Okay, I guess that's it for today.
Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to present some answers to some of the questions. There are many other questions, and don't hesitate to look it up on the Venus Project.
Thanks, everyone, for your questions and for your time. Sven, do you have anything you want to go over?
Not anything in particular, because I'm running out of time as well. I have another appointment, but thank you for your time, and thanks everyone for joining us today. And also thanks for many of those questions we heard today. because I had which is a personal view, but I had the impression that there were actually some new and some more relevant questions, and I get the impression that people start educating themselves more and more, which is ultimately relevant to the forthcoming of our project. So over time, I feel that questions are getting more relevant because the level of education within the Venus Projects community is raising. So in the future, I'm really looking forward to detailed questions, to questions that are more educated and more into specifics. Because if you go over all our materials, all the books we provide, the videos on YouTube, the lectures, and all the PDFs and presentations we have on our website to download. If you go all over this material, you will arrive at a certain level of understanding, and based on that, your questions in the future will be more relevant to your understanding and the understanding of others.
Thanks, Ben, we agree.
So again, thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Jacque and Roxanne for answering all our questions, and looking forward to hearing from you at the latest next Sunday.